Hello and welcome to all our listeners and viewers of the Suidlanders Media channel and wherever you get this information from, maybe some of the other channels, we also put it on BitTube and so forth. It's another Suidlanders chat with me, Marius Greyling, and obviously Simon Roche, my counterpart or my partner in crime with this Suidlanders chat program. Hi, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Marius. It's very hot where I am in Crimea, Russia, southern Russia, but otherwise I'm alive and kicking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you can see, I've got a nice warm top on. So here in Upington, it's quite cold. Well, interesting how the world works. Summer in one place, winter in another place. But anyway, Simon, previously off air, I just discussed with you quite a few talking points. I think in the last couple of days, the biggest thing maybe is Trump saying he's going to aid Ukraine again with weapons and missiles, but not directly. He's going to basically do it via other countries. So any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a very complicated subject. There are three or four or five interwoven strands. On the one hand, you have as a backdrop to what we're going to discuss, Russia producing something like 12 times the number of missiles that the West altogether produces, whether you measure it in a day. Famously, in recent days, Mark Rutte got all muddled up, and he made like a odd, sort of false mathematical comparison. But whether you say they produce 12 times more in a day or an hour or a minute or a second or a week or a month or a year, they produce 12 times as much as all of the West, NATO,
Yeah.
all parties uh, put together, all parties in the West put together. So you have this massive potential that Russia is generating for striking Ukraine. And we've seen in recent days that Russia has struck Ukraine with 650 drones and missiles on one night, 550 on another night. It was 11 missiles and 539 drones on that given night. And on a previous night, 330 odd, if I recall correctly. So that's the backdrop. Now Ukraine is saying, well, we've got to have weapons to defend ourselves. The Russians are overwhelming us. The USA promised, that is to say, Donald Trump told Vladimir Putin that they would back off on providing weapons to Ukraine. So, in the first instance, he's contradicting himself. He's told a lie, and he is doing enormous harm to his reputation in the world. Outside of the what they call the collective West, and outside of those people who are supporters of Donald Trump, there is an emerging mistrust, like you can't believe it's being spoken about openly now, even at very high levels, where you in the past would have gotten a lot more diplomacy, diplomatic language,
Yeah.
tact. Very senior figures are talking about the USA in disdainful and dismissive terms. Reporters are asking diplomats, what do you think of the USA, whatever the question may be, and the reply is something along the lines of, well, we know that we can't trust them, and then they give a more to the point answer. So the basis of understanding at the moment is that this guy simply can't be trusted, right? So he has since promised that, or said that he's going to continue providing weapons to Ukraine. Another strand, we will address these strands and kind of tie them together if we can, is that Germany committed to giving Ukraine 150 Taurus missiles.
Yeah.
Apparently, Germany has something like 550 Taurus missiles in stock, but a certain number of them are not serviceable. And perhaps, there's been a lot of speculation, perhaps 250 of them are serviceable, but Germany for now is only willing to give 150. So the Russians said that is an absolute red line because of the distance that the Taurus missiles work. The Russians are under no illusions. I've spoken about this in many videos over recent months that I've been in Russia. It's now beyond any question whatsoever that NATO has been firing missiles on Russian troops since almost the beginning of this war. So there's not a change in principle, but in practice, the Russians are saying the Taurus missiles' reach is so great that you're pushing your luck now. It's one thing to fly a missile 300 kilometers. It's another to be able to fire it something between 1,000 and 1,500 kilometers and potentially hit Moscow. It's absolutely out of the question. What's more, the Taurus missiles can potentially accommodate nuclear warheads. So it's a no-go. So the Germans, the deceit, the deviousness, the dishonesty, oh, it's so devilish. The Germans then said, what we'll do is, as if it was a completely unrelated proposal, about a week and a half later, there's this announcement by the Germans, we're going to go into a joint venture armaments agreement, production, manufacture and production agreement with the Ukrainians. We are not going to provide them with Taurus missiles, but we're going to give them the knowledge and the skills and the machine parts and the tech, you know, the artisans, the tool and die makers and what have you, and so on to make the missiles. Or they weren't even specific about missiles, whatever it was that they're going to make. Yeah. And the Russians are standing there with the Chinese and the Indians and all sorts of people shaking their heads saying, how stupid do you think that we are? We know that you're not going to be able to set up any factory in record-breaking time. And we know that you're not sitting with some design that you've just figured out over the past couple of weeks of some new and interesting howitzer or whatever the case may be. You are sending those blasted Taurus missiles to Ukraine. In fact, our intelligence is saying that they are already in Ukraine. And you're making the smoke screen, but the smoke screen is only about this thin.
Yeah.
You know? So another strand in this is, I'm sorry, you can't help but laugh. Donald Trump said in response to a reporter's question that the Europeans would buy weapons from the USA. So he said he's going to continue supplying. Or he said he's not going to supply. Then he said, no, we will continue to supply. Then there was an enormous backlash at the deceit of the man, the crass dishonesty. So then he said that we're going to sell the weapons to Europeans and the Europeans are going to buy them from us. It's just an absolute muddled up spaghetti bolognese clown show. It's like spaghetti bolognese made out of, you know, if you think of a cereal or a porridge or something, and it's got little kiddies, brightly colored pieces in it, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, a little clown, a little zebra, you know, to encourage the child to eat their breakfast. It's some kind of spaghetti bolognese made out of little kiddies' shiny trinkets or something. There's an element of absolute clownishness that the world cannot take seriously. And then there's an element of mad, who knows what, muddled up stuff. So, to get back to the point, he then said, there is a European country that has 17 Patriot batteries that it can send, that it's going to send, that it wants to send, that it shall send. By a process of elimination, that can only be Germany. Each Patriot battery comes with 16 warheads. So you get a figure of 70. I wish I brought my calculator here. 17 times 16 is 230 odd. Just imagine the Russians are firing, depending upon the night, 100, 200, 332, if I remember correctly, 550, 650 drones and missiles a night. So the 230 are not going to make any difference to anything. At most, they will provide a crucial, vital defense to the government in Kyiv, and perhaps to one or two other crucial key points.
Yeah.
However, there's a catch. There is another piece of evidence that makes absolute fiction a confectionery of this, and that is that the cost of 17 complete Patriot air defense batteries, which are composed of a vehicle that launches the missiles, a control vehicle, a radar vehicle, and then one or two more support vehicles. So all in all, it's 6 elements that compose a battery of a Patriot battery with 16 missiles. The cost would be $2.3 trillion. Ukraine is never going to have $2.3 trillion in the foreseeable future. It's selling its farmland and its lithium and its what have you to BlackRock and to Oak Tree. Is it Oak Tree and the other venture capital, something River, Argent River, I think it's called, capital. All these Israeli-owned companies.
Yeah.
And the Europeans don't have $2.3 trillion. They are scratching for coins at the moment to make their budgets balance. All of Western Europe's budgets have enormous gaping holes in them that are only being, well, not covered, but somehow avoided or circumvented by funny mathematics. There's all sorts of diddling of the books going on at the moment, as all of the governments of Western Europe kind of pretend that they're not functionally bankrupt. So where this $2.3 trillion is going to come from, nobody knows. And what those missiles are going to do is going to be pathetically little, and it's just one big mess of lies. However, what I think will occur is that the United States will continue to clandestinely provide, as another thread in this story, to answer your question well, and continue to provide lots and lots and lots of odds and ends. For instance, 5.56 millimeter rounds, and grenades, and rifle grenades, and mines, and this, that, and the next thing. So I think they'll keep the Ukrainian army going quite well. However, at the risk of making this a very long-winded answer, but to give the audience a good sense of perspective, as I mentioned to you recently, Oleksiy Arestovich, the Ukrainian senior advisor to Volodymyr Zelensky, who subsequently resigned, perhaps in late 2023, or I think actually last year, famously gave an interview in 2019 in which he described, you can still find it on YouTube, how Ukraine, as a proxy of NATO, he didn't use that word proxy, but he did allude to how Ukraine would be functioning as part of a subordinate extension of NATO to lure Russia into a war, how it would be done. So it was all laid out. And he said, we'll antagonize and provoke and goad them until they have no choice but to launch an invasion of Ukraine. And then, hey presto, we've got the West versus Russia war that the West wants, which we won't go into it now, but we will. Arnold and I will, your colleague Arnold and I will produce a documentary, perhaps an hour long, on how this war has been coming, in fact, for centuries. And it's to do with all sorts of occult stuff that is well recorded. And if anybody thinks that we're going off the deep end and becoming superstitious and not serious, they can look things up for themselves. It's a matter of fact that this is an occult thing that has been desired by very Luciferian forces in the West for a long time. This guy, Alexei Arestovich, I mention all of that to give credibility to him in the eyes of your viewers, so that they know he knows what he's talking about. Did an interview 2 weeks ago in which he explained that the Ukrainian army was something like 1 million strong, and that the Russian army was something like 650 to 700,000 strong, and that by rights, the Russians shouldn't be making any advances, because in all textbooks, as he puts it, an aggressor force coming against strongholds, against fortified positions that are defended, must have at least a 3-to-1 advantage. He said, Russia doesn't have an advantage. We have an advantage, but they're absolutely killing us. He said, in fact, if Russia wasn't for some reason deliberately prosecuting the war in a sort of a cautious and gradual way, if Russia decided to fully mobilize and go at them, he said they would crack us like a rotten walnut and we would fall within a few weeks. So my point being, in response to your question, Marius, that I think that the USA will continue to just, if I may use the word, bull dust, lie its way through this blooming spaghetti mess of Donald Trump and his administration's ditherings and dallyings and backwardings and forwardings and yayings and nayings. But it will provide, let's say, smaller elements, lighter arms to Ukraine clandestinely, but on a large scale, in the hope that Ukraine can continue to resist for an extended period of time, while the West gears up for this war with Russia that Macron and Starmer and Merz and so on are talking about. But at the moment, to conclude, Russia has so much the upper hand that I think that the West is going to struggle to control or to dictate the progress of events, that is the supply of weapons and allowing Ukraine to stand against the Russians in the way that it would like to. I don't think that the West has a fraction of the initiative that it is selling to the world. It's talking in big terms, but really its proxy, its puppet, and its forces, because there's thousands upon thousands of NATO, not mercenaries, NATO serving regular army soldiers in Ukraine, are being absolutely smashed on the battlefield, Marius.
Yeah, then Senator Lindsey Graham, for the people that don't know him, he's quite a war-hungry senator. That's it. It's in Senate at the moment with Trump. He said that the weapons will flow to Ukraine, and watch out to all the countries, especially China, that's been supporting Russia through buying from them, for instance, cheap oil and cheap other products. We will sanction you guys, blah, 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 blah. And I just laughed because Trump already tried to put tariffs on China. China turned it around on Trump. Trump said, okay, whoa, not that far. Let's renegotiate. So, I mean, that ship has sailed of sanctioning China. China's got too many things that America needs for Trump to play that game. But I laughed at Senator Lindsey Graham, what just making some things that all these other countries that's buying cheap oil from Russia, for instance, you guys are next on our hit list. And I was just shaking my head, and I was like, yeah, it's a clown show, like you always say.
Yeah, it is. You know, Marius, the Easterners, Oriental people, this is a big generalization, and I'm not here to offend Japanese and whatever people, but the Japanese, for instance, are very self-conscious about the fact that other people have to invent things that they then manufacture. So they have in Japan a competition, an ongoing thing. It's a huge, enormous thing, where the state invites people to come up with inventions. And you can find books, you can find it on the internet. There are millions upon millions of the most random inventions that you can imagine. And most of them are absolutely not, they're pointless.
Yeah.
It's not to say that they're bad, but they're just pointless. Let's say an invention to make you seem taller under certain circumstances. So you press a button and it jacks up the soles of your shoes. Let's say, I mean, but there are millions of them. People should Google search these ridiculous inventions. My point being that there is a sort of a stereotype among Oriental people that they're not very creative. They can only copy. The North Koreans at the moment are running an enormous campaign that 100% mimics the pro-Putin campaigns on YouTube and other social media of the period immediately after the special military operation. And there's this song. I'm no good at singing. I'm a singing embarrassment. But I'll try. Ho ho lo lo lo. You know, it's ho ho lo lo lo. There's this. I don't know what song that is. I don't know where it comes from, but it's a song. And Vladimir Putin is ho ho lo 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 walking down the passageway in the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin is getting into a car. He's getting out of a car. He's graciously affectionate towards a blind girl who gives him flowers. And there was this campaign. They're using the same music and the same scenarios for Kim Jong-un at the moment. So
yeah,
he loves his people so much, and then they show him showing love.
Yeah,
he inspects the railway carriages in person, and there you see him getting down on his knees, and he's telling his assistants to look closely at the quality of the carpets in the train carriage. And then he goes into a school classroom, and it says he loves the children so much, cares about their safety, and closely examines the quality of the windows. And you'll see there's a classroom full of children, and the school mistress is giving a lesson, and he'll be, I happen to have a magnifying glass here. I haven't seen him do this with a magnifying glass, but it's as near as, damn it, checking the quality of the windows to see that whoever's making the windows is not betraying the nation by manufacturing poor quality windows for the beloved children of North Korea. My point being that, in response to you, it seems as if there is a lot of awareness in certain circles, you and I have discussed this before, that war is inevitable and we might as well drop the pretenses. Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, said to Kaya Collis, I've lost my bearing as far as dates are concerned. It could have been as recently as the beginning of last week. 10 or so days ago, 11 days ago. He said to her, we will not allow Russia to lose in Ukraine. Don't come here and talk to, she was over there, talk to me in a high and mighty, perhaps patronizing way about how we should be looking at the conflict. We are on Russia's side, end of story. So when you mention Lindsey Graham, these guys are living in a parallel universe. They think that they can say things like, we are going to plump. They spoke about 500% terrorists previously. These people, they think that they can say to the world, as Donald Trump has said, in sort of a parallel with Lindsey Graham 2 days ago, I'm giving Russia 50 days. 50 days? And then, if I'm not satisfied with the progress, I'm going to impose heavy tariffs on them. And lurking in the background, what's implied is this famous, previously 500%, now 100% tariff on those countries that do business with Russia. So in other words, if you, Marius Greyling, the great state, the Federal Republic of Marius Greyling, if you buy $1 billion worth of oil from Russia, the United States is going to come along to you and say, now you must give us $1 billion of free money because you have to, your tariff is payable to the USA.
Yeah.
It's children. I know children who are not so childish.
Yeah.
It has reached the point where I remember in my early 20s reading a book called Pillar of Iron, and it was about a famous Roman emperor who served between two other kind of dissolute, degenerate, bad emperors. And I remember reading that book in my early 20s and thinking to myself, could this be true? And for instance, the preceding emperor named his horse, made his horse, his horse was named Incitatus, and he made him a senator. So the horse would be brought into the Senate. It would stand there, bored out of its mind, not knowing what the hang is going on, pooing all over the floor, you know, and supposedly voting on vital items for discussion, you know, in the Roman Senate. And, okay, they haven't made Donald Trump's pet poodle, Trudy, a congressman yet, but it's almost there, Marius. If Marius and Arnold are going to be friends with one another, then I'm going to be sad. And that means that Marius and Arnold must give me free money. It's unbelievable what we are discussing here today.
Yeah.
And the newspapers, even the right wing, let's say right of center, not the right wing, right of center, speak about it in quite profound terms. Donald Trump said, and then I think, what do you think? Well, I think that it could be that people speak about this as if it's not a circus, as if it's really quite serious, and we should be taking it seriously, and we should be trying to get greater meaning out of it, and then examine that meaning for significance, analyzing it and assessing it, and acting according. No! Laugh, mock, ridicule, because it is that idiotic. If China buys $100 billion of oil, natural gas, and fertilizer from Russia, then the USA wants $100 billion of free money because I'm sad.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know, Simon. It is absolutely ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. Listen, we've got about 7 minutes left. I'm just gonna put two statements out there. They don't have anything to do with each other, but I just want a small response from you before we end this. The first one is we've spoken previously of the red heifers and how it's a marker of what's going to happen in the third temple that's going to be built. Now, apparently, about 7 days ago, I guess. There was a red heifer that got disqualified because it got two black hairs next to each other, but there's no photos of that specific black hairs. And then they all got dressed up and they all had the ceremony. And they said, listen here, this is just a pre-run of the ceremony that we are going to do. So they sacrificed that red heifer that was comes to disqualified, and they did the whole shebang, and the world now thinks, was this maybe not the real ceremony that took place under our eyes, and they are just eye blinding us by saying it's not.
Yeah, Marius, we should probably do a full video about it because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot more that has occurred in that regard than people are aware of, or the majority of people, 999 out of a million people are coming. Nobody seems to be aware of how far advanced this thing is. But the short form answer is yes, it could be. And I have very strong suspicions that things are even further advanced than I think they are. I think I know what's going on because I'm paying attention and I'm on the ball. I think even I have no clue how far advanced this is because every so often you get a new piece of evidence and you think, goodness gracious me, are they that far? You hear, for instance, that they've made all of the, let's say, the garments. And you'll think, oh, all right, so they'll select the people anytime soon. Then you'll find out, you'll see, as I have watched a video of the actual choir singing it's cantillation actually,
Yeah.
as opposed to singing. The chants, the cantillation, the songs that they're going to sing in the temple. So yes, I think, to be brief, yes, very far advanced.
Yeah, and then the last one. This is not really a very good talking point because it's just something that's been noticed, and that's all the animals that's starting to leave Yellowstone Park in America. Apparently, there was a small eruption, and now 4, 5, 6 days later, all the bears, all the wildcats, all the antelope, all the bucks, everything is living in the hordes. There's lots of videos on the internet, and normally that is a precursor for some kind of natural disaster that's going to take place. Most people know that Yellowstone is on a big volcano that's going to erupt. Quite some interesting videos of just seeing the animals actually leaving. But then the park ranger saying, no, this is a migration pattern, although they've never migrated like that out of Yellowstone.
Yeah, Marius, I'm one of those people who was skeptical for years. And I mean, from childhood, from the time that I began to read fairly seriously at the age of about 5 or 6 or 7. And so you might read an encyclopedia or a children's, not a comic book, but a book that's supposed to be educational, or you watch as we used to once a term, once every 3 months, we'd be allowed to have a movie at school, and it would generally be two movies. The one would be, on 16 millimeter film, and the one would be educational, and then the other would be fun.
Yeah.
And so there would be some American documentary on the rainforest or whatever the case may be. And I developed what I thought was a healthy skepticism very early on for this thing where they say, ooh, this volcano erupts in an 8,000-year cycle. And right now, it is 400 years past 8,000 years. It could erupt any time. And you think, goodness gracious me, we're all about to die. But by the 55th time that you've heard it, you think, rubbish, man. People say this stuff just for drama's sake.
Yeah.
But now, as everything comes full circle, I find myself seeing some of the stuff that's going on in the world. and thinking to myself, maybe, just maybe, because that is one of those natural phenomena. If you talk about fault lines, earthquakes, volcanoes, and calderas, and all of these sorts of things, that is supposedly a very long time overdue. So who knows? Maybe any day now we're going to see big drama.
Yeah.
And those faults, those American faults extend great distances.
Mm.
They run through San Francisco and down into the Pacific. I'm no expert at all, but I have just like the Great Rift Valley. Technically, it runs all the way to South Africa. The Great Rift Valley in East Africa runs from, I think, northern Ethiopia to northern South Africa, technically speaking.
Mm.
So, yeah, if it does go, it
Sure.
may be small, it may be medium, it may be large, and it may be cataclysmically enormous.
Yeah.
Only time will tell, Marius. But I think we're out of time, aren't we?
Yeah. Simon, thanks very much for the chat. I enjoyed it like always. And then, yeah, I'll catch you on another video again. I hope you have a lovely time what's left of it in Russia.
No, thank you very much, Marius. Cheerio.
Cheers. Bye-bye.